He gave her everything a woman could dream of, a mansion, a car, money, and a love that felt almost too good to be real. But on their wedding night, she discovered exactly why it was. In the town of Ugwek, where the red earth stretches far and the river sings at dawn, there lived a young woman named Adaeze. Adaeze was not the kind of woman who chased men. She was the kind of woman men noticed, not just for her beauty, but for the quiet strength she carried. She had been hurt before. A past relationship had left marks on her heart that she did not speak about often. So she had built a wall around herself, focused on her small business selling fabric at the market, and told herself that love would come when it was ready. She was not ready for Chukwuemeka. He appeared one afternoon like something out of a story someone else was living. A sleek black car. A well-ironed outfit. A calm, unhurried smile. He did not rush to impress her. He simply introduced himself and asked if he could walk with her for a moment. In Ugwek, everyone knew the name Chukwuemeka. He was one of the wealthiest men in the region. Big buildings, thriving businesses, a name that opened doors. But in person, he was nothing like the arrogant rich men Adaeze had seen before. He was soft-spoken. He listened when she talked. He remembered small things she mentioned in passing and brought them up weeks later. He made her feel seen. He took her to dinners she had never been to. He sent her gifts not to buy her affection, but to show he was thinking of her. He called her every evening just to ask about her day. Slowly, without even realizing it, Adaeze's wall came down, brick by brick. Months into their courtship, Adaeze began to notice something. Chukwuemeka never pushed for physical intimacy. Every time the moment felt like it was moving in that direction, he would gently pull back. At first she assumed he was being respectful. But as time went on, she decided to ask him directly. She looked at him one evening and said, "Emeka, do you find me attractive? Because I feel like you always stop yourself." He took her hands, looked her in the eyes and said, "Adaeze, I find you more beautiful than you know. But what I feel for you is too precious to treat cheaply. I want to wait until we are married. I want our wedding night to be the first night. That is how much I respect you. That is how much I cherish you." Adaeze stared at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. She had never met a man who spoke that way. And in that moment, she stopped asking questions. She should have asked more. The wedding was everything Ugwek had talked about for years. 3 days of celebration. 2 canopies full of guests. Music that started at sunrise and did not stop until midnight. Chukwuemeka spared no expense. Adaeze stood at the altar in white and gold, and every woman in that compound whispered to themselves that she was the luckiest woman alive. She believed them. The wedding night came. The suite was prepared with candles and rose petals and soft music playing from a small speaker in the corner. Adaeze sat on the bed, heart full, waiting for her husband. Chukwuemeka walked in. He sat down across from her. And he did not come closer. The silence stretched between them like a wide river. Adaeze watched him. He was staring at the floor, his hands clasped together, his jaw tight. "Emeka," she said softly. "What is wrong?" He exhaled slowly, like a man releasing something he had been holding for a very long time. "Adaeze," he said, "there is something I have to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago. Before today. I was afraid and I am sorry." She moved toward him. "Tell me." "I was in an accident. A terrible accident, years before we met. I survived it, but I lost something. Something that a man brings to his wife on a night like this. I am not complete, Adaeze. I cannot be a husband to you in that way. I have nothing to give you." The candles kept burning. The soft music kept playing. But everything else in the room went completely still. Adaeze stood up slowly. She walked to the window. She did not speak for a very long time. When she turned back to look at him, her eyes were full of questions she did not know how to ask. "Why did you not tell me before the wedding?" she said finally. "Why did you let me stand at that altar not knowing this?" "Because I was afraid to lose you," he said. His voice broke on the last word. "Adaeze, I have never loved anyone the way I love you. If I had told you before, you would have left. And I cannot survive losing you. I cannot." He got off the chair and went down to his knees before her. A wealthy, powerful man, on his knees on his wedding night. His eyes were wet. "Please do not go," he said. "Stay with me. I will give you everything else. Everything I have is yours. I will take care of you every single day. I will never hurt you. I will never disrespect you. All I am asking is that you stay." Adaeze looked at this man kneeling before her. A man who had been nothing but kind to her for months. A man who made her feel safe. A man whose house she now lived in, whose name she now carried. She thought about starting over. She thought about the questions people would ask. She thought about the months of love, real or not, she had felt it. She sat back down on the bed. She did not leave. Life in Chukwuemeka's house was comfortable in every way that could be seen from the outside. The home was beautiful. The food was plenty. The help was always available. Chukwuemeka continued to be attentive, bringing her breakfast, asking about her day, checking on her needs. On the surface, it looked like a good marriage. But behind the closed doors of their bedroom, Adaeze carried a loneliness that had no name. She was a young woman with needs. A full heart and an empty bed. She told herself to be patient. She told herself that love was more than one thing. But weeks became months and the loneliness grew louder. One evening, Chukwuemeka sat beside her with a calm, careful expression. The kind of expression a man wears when he has thought about something for a long time and finally decided to say it. "Adaeze," he began. "I have been thinking about you. About what I cannot give you. And it is not fair to keep you this way." She looked at him, not sure where he was going. "There is a man I know," he continued. "His name is Tebena. He is a gym instructor. He is discreet and trustworthy. I want you to be happy. I cannot give you everything, but I refuse to watch you suffer. I am giving you my blessing. Whatever happens between you two stays between us." Adaeze pulled away from him. Her face was caught between shock and disgust. "You are telling me to go and be with another man," she said. "And you are calling that love?" "I am calling it honesty," he said quietly. "I know what I cannot give you. I would rather be honest than pretend and watch you fade." She did not agree that night. She did not agree the next night either. But Chukwuemeka was patient. He was always patient. He kept bringing it up gently, never with pressure, just with the steady logic of a man who had already decided how things would go. And eventually, Adaeze agreed. Tebena began coming around. Then a second man was introduced. Chukwuemeka arranged everything. The meetings, the discretion, the boundaries. He never showed anger. He never showed jealousy. He watched everything from a calm distance with the eyes of a man who was getting exactly what he wanted. And then Adaeze made a decision of her own. She called Felix. Felix was her ex-boyfriend from before Chukwuemeka. A self-made trader with shops in the city and goods imported from overseas. She had genuinely loved Felix once. The relationship had ended because of distance and timing, not because the feeling died. She told herself that calling him was just about finding someone familiar. Someone she already trusted. Felix came. They met in a hotel on the edge of town. And for the first time in months, Adaeze felt something close to normal. She did not know that by making that phone call, she had written Felix's name into a story with a very dark ending. Friends, if this story already has you gripped, you have not seen anything yet. Before we continue, take just a moment right now. Hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel and turn on your notifications so you never miss a story like this. Drop a comment below and tell us, if you were Adaeze, would you have stayed or walked away on that wedding night? We want to hear from you. Now let us continue. Because from this point forward, the consequences begin. And they are devastating. When Chukwuemeka's younger sister Ngozi arrived for her university holidays, she came with a travel bag, a cheerful smile, and a sharpness in her eyes that no one had prepared for. Ngozi was not a troublemaker. She was simply the kind of person who noticed things. She noticed the way a certain man lingered too long before leaving the compound one morning. She noticed how Adaeze greeted that man with eyes that said more than a greeting should. She noticed how her brother, when she tried to bring it up casually, changed the subject faster than an innocent man should. She decided to be sure before she said anything serious. So she followed. She watched. And one afternoon, she used her phone to record Adaeze and Felix meeting at a hotel, clear enough, long enough, impossible to misunderstand. She went straight to her brother with the phone in her hand, her heart pounding with the certainty that she was doing the right thing. "Brother, look at this," she said, holding out the screen. "Your wife is..." She looked down at her own phone. The screen was blank. The video was gone. Not deleted, gone. As if it had never been recorded. As if the phone itself had swallowed the evidence. She shook the phone. She checked every folder, every corner of the storage. Nothing. Chukwuemeka looked at her with an expression that stopped her cold. He was not angry. He was not confused. He looked at her the way a person looks at a child throwing a tantrum, waiting for it to finish. "Ngozi," he said, "go and rest. You are tired from traveling." She stood in that room, staring at her brother, and felt a chill she could not explain. She did not go and rest. She packed a small bag and traveled to the village. Their mother, Mama Emeka, was a woman carved from old wood, tough, loud, and fiercely devoted to her son. When Ngozi told her what she had seen, Mama Emeka did not wait for morning. She tied her wrapper and told Ngozi to prepare to leave. They arrived at Chukwuemeka's house in full force. Mama Emeka pointed her finger at Adaeze and announced to the whole compound that this woman was a disgrace, that she was using charms to control her son, that she had captured his mind and was running his house like a marketplace. Adaeze stood in silence, cheeks burning. Then Chukwuemeka walked out. His face was calm. Completely, unnervingly calm. "Mama," he said, "I respect you. But I am asking you to leave my house. My wife has done nothing wrong. And whatever is happening in my home is my business and not yours." Mama Emeka could not believe what she was hearing. Her son, her own son, was sending her away because of a woman. "Emeka, this woman has done something to you," she said, her voice breaking between anger and grief. "You cannot even see it. She has covered your eyes. Mama, please go." The gate closed. Mother and daughter stood outside on the road, unable to understand. Mama Emeka wiped her face and made a sound, half cry, half warning. "This will not end well," she said. She was right. She just did not know how right she was, or what end she was heading toward herself. Nobody noticed it at first because bad things happen to people all the time. A man loses his job. A family loses someone. A business goes wrong. These things happen. They are painful, but they are normal. But this was not normal. Tebena, the gym instructor, was the first. His wife had been pregnant, a healthy pregnancy, full of joy. She went into labor and neither she nor the baby came out alive. The whole street mourned with him. A tragedy, people said. These things happen, people said. But Tebena did not recover. In the weeks that followed, something began to break inside him. He forgot things. He started hearing and seeing things that were not there. He would wake up in the middle of the night shouting. He wandered through the streets in the early hours with no memory of leaving his house. The strong man who spent his mornings lifting weights could no longer carry himself from one room to another. His mind was gone. His family was gone. He had walked into Chukwuemeka's house as a healthy man and he was being dismantled piece by piece. Then came the second man. His mother died in the village suddenly, no illness, no warning. He traveled home to bury her and returned to the city to find that one of his sisters had also fallen and died. He could not understand it. He had no time to finish grieving before the second sister died in circumstances nobody could explain. His life was being pulled apart at the roots and he had no idea why. But the heaviest hand fell on Felix. It started with the fire. His shop, one of his most successful businesses, stocked with goods, well managed, burned to the ground overnight. He told himself it was an accident. He borrowed money, planned to recover, ordered a new container of goods from overseas. That container never arrived. It sank in the sea before it reached the port and Felix stood at a customs office reading a damage report with the blank face of a man who does not yet know that this is only the beginning. Then the calls from the village started. His mother was gone. No warning. No long illness. Just gone. He buried his mother with what was left of his savings. He was still in mourning when his only sister came to visit him in the city. She stayed for 2 days. She hugged him at his gate, climbed into a vehicle heading back to the village, and never arrived. A car accident on the highway. She died before anyone could reach her. Felix sat in his empty house and stared at the wall. His friend David came and sat with him in that silence for a while. Then David spoke. "Felix, I have seen bad luck. I have seen hard times. But what is happening to you is not ordinary. This is not bad luck. Something is going after you specifically, and if you do not get help, there will be nothing left of you to save." Felix did not argue. A man with nothing left does not argue. "Where do I go?" he asked. Prophet Samuel was not a loud man. He did not shout or perform. He sat in a simple room in a modest church and spoke with the quietness of someone who did not need to prove what he knew. Felix sat before him, sunken-eyed and hollow, not sure what he was expecting. The prophet looked at him for a moment and then spoke before Felix could say a single word. "Your problems did not begin in your business," he said. "They began in a bedroom that does not belong to you. There is a woman you have been visiting. She belongs to another man." Felix went still. "That man is not an ordinary man," the prophet continued. "He operates in deep darkness. Every man who enters his house through that woman becomes a source of payment for the powers he serves. Your losses, your shop, your goods, your mother, your sister, these were not accidents. You have been feeding something invisible with everything you have, and with everyone you love. And it is not finished with you yet. Felix's hands trembled on his lap. What do I do? He said. Bring the woman to me, the prophet said. Not to judge her. She may not know the full truth of what her husband is. Bring her here so I can speak to her. Because to stop what is happening to you, the source has to be cut. And she is the door. Felix called Adaeze that evening. She was suspicious. She was guarded. But something in his voice, the complete, stripped rawness of a man who had lost everything and had nothing left to perform for, made her listen. She came. Prophet Samuel received her without drama, without accusation. He looked at her gently, the way you look at someone you are about to give a heavy burden to, not because you want to hurt them, but because the truth is the only thing that can save them. Sit down, my daughter, he said. What I am going to tell you is going to be difficult to hear. But I need you to stay calm and listen carefully, because your life depends on it. He told her. He told her that Chukwuemeka's condition was not from any accident. He told her that her husband had traded his own body for wealth and power. He told her that the dark covenant he served required a continuous sacrifice, and that sacrifice was fed through her. Every man who came to her in that house left carrying a spiritual debt, collected through their families, their health, their lives. Adaeze sat across from the prophet and felt the world she had built tilt sideways. He knew, she said. Not a question. A realization arriving slowly, like cold water. He arranged all of it, the prophet said. She thought about the men Chukwuemeka had brought himself. She thought about how he never once showed jealousy. She thought about that unreadable calm on his face, the face of a man who was not sharing his wife, but supplying his altar. What do I do? She asked. Her voice was steady, but only barely. There is a clay pot, the prophet said, wrapped in red cloth, tied with cord. It is hidden beneath your matrimonial bed. That pot is where his power over you and over the men connected to you is rooted. You need to go home when he is not there, find that pot, and break it. The moment it breaks, he will feel it. So you cannot stop to think. You break it and you leave immediately. Come back here directly. Do not go anywhere else. Do not call anyone. Break it and run. Adaeze nodded. She stood up. She straightened herself. And she went home. She entered the house quietly. Chukwuemeka was away. The compound was calm. Everything looked the same as it always did. Beautiful, comfortable, normal. The kind of normal that had been a lie from the very beginning. She walked to the bedroom and stood at the edge of the bed for a moment. Then she got on her knees and looked underneath. There it was. A dark clay pot, pressed against the wall in the far corner where no casual eye would find it. Wrapped tightly in red cloth, tied with a thick cord, half covered in what looked like dry earth. She had slept above this thing every night of her marriage. She reached in and pulled it out. It was heavier than it looked. She stood up with it in her hands and she looked at it, really looked at it, and felt something she could not name rise from the bottom of her stomach. Then she raised it and smashed it against the floor. The sound it made was not like a normal clay pot breaking. It was louder somehow. Denser. The red cloth fell open. Dark soil scattered across the floor along with other things she did not want to look at. Something was inside that pot that had no business being inside any pot. Adaeze did not stop to examine it. She grabbed her bag, stepped over the broken pieces, and walked out of the house without looking back. Across town, in the middle of a business meeting, Chukwuemeka stopped speaking mid-sentence. His hand went to his chest. He looked around the room slowly, like a man who has just heard a sound no one else can hear. His eyes changed. Something moved behind them, not emotion, not surprise, but alarm. The deep alarm of a man whose foundation has just cracked. He stood up, excused himself, and walked out of the room. He drove home fast. He walked through the house and went straight to the bedroom. He looked at the floor. He saw the broken pot, the scattered earth, the open red cloth. He stood over the ruins of it in silence. His phone rang. The voice on the other end was not the voice of any human being he had ever introduced to anyone. You have until sunset, the voice said. The woman, your mother, your sister, all three must be given before darkness falls. Or you take their place. The call ended. Chukwuemeka looked at himself in the bedroom mirror for a long moment. Then he picked up his car keys and drove toward the village. Prophet Samuel received the news with a calm that Adaeze could not understand, given what was coming. He will go to the village first, the prophet said. His mother and sister are there, and he knows that is where we will go. We need to move now. They left in a car, the prophet, Adaeze, and Felix. The road to the village stretched out ahead of them in the afternoon heat. They drove fast. No one spoke much. The weight of what they were driving towards sat in the vehicle with them like a fourth passenger. Then the car stopped. No noise. No grinding. No warning. The engine simply died in the middle of the road. Adaeze looked at the prophet. "Is it?" she began. "Yes," he said quietly. He closed his eyes and began to pray. His voice was low but certain, the voice of a man who had stood in this exact kind of moment before. The words he spoke were firm and deliberate, spoken with the full weight of everything he believed. The engine turned over once. Twice. On the third try, the car roared back to life. They drove on. But they were not fast enough to save everyone. They arrived in the village to the sound of wailing. Neighbors gathered outside the compound. Women with their hands on their heads. Men standing in tight clusters with lowered eyes. Mama Emeka was already gone. She had complained of nothing. She had been sitting in her compound that afternoon and simply fell. By the time anyone reached her, she was already beyond reach. Adaeze stepped out of the car and Ngozi came toward her like a storm. "You!" Ngozi shouted. "You dare come here? After everything you have done to this family? Our mother is dead and you show your face here? Get away from this compound. You are a witch and I will not let you stand on the same ground where my mother." "Ngozi!" The uncle stepped between them. His voice was not loud but it carried the authority of a man who has lived long enough to know when to pause and when to listen. "Let the man of God speak. We will have time for everything else. Let him speak first." Ngozi stopped. She was shaking. Her eyes were red and swollen. But she stopped. Prophet Samuel stood before the gathered family in the compound where Mama Emeka had lived her whole life. "I know this is a moment of grief," he said. "And I am sorry for your loss. But there are things you must know right now, before this evening comes to its end. Because your lives depend on what happens in the next few hours." He told them everything. Chukwuemeka's covenant. The pot beneath the bed. The men connected to Adaeze. The voice on the phone and what it demanded. The compound went very quiet. Ngozi looked at the prophet, then at Adaeze, then at the uncle. The fury on her face slowly transformed into something more complicated and more painful. The face of a person whose understanding of their entire family has just been rewritten. "He is coming here," the uncle said. "He is already on his way," the prophet said. "And he is not coming to grieve." Chukwuemeka arrived as the sun was beginning to lean toward the horizon. He stepped out of his car and walked into the compound. He looked at the gathered faces, his sister, his uncle, Felix, Adaeze, and the prophet. He looked at each of them in turn without visible emotion. Then his eyes settled on Prophet Samuel. The prophet looked back at him without flinching. "Chukwuemeka," the prophet said. His voice was even and unhurried. "It is over. The pot is broken. The agreement is exposed. The only path left to you now is the truth. Confess what you have done. Confess it here, before these people. There is mercy available even now, but it requires truth." Chukwuemeka's jaw tightened. He looked at Adaeze. Something moved briefly across his face, something that might, in another life, have been genuine. "You destroyed everything," he said to her quietly. "She saved herself," the prophet replied. "Confess, Chukwuemeka." "I have nothing to confess to you." The praying began. The prophet started, and the others joined, Felix, Adaeze, Ngozi, the uncle. The voices rose together in that compound as the afternoon light turned orange and the shadows grew long. Chukwuemeka stood in the middle of it and something began to happen to him. He planted his feet as if resisting a force pushing down from above. His fists clenched at his sides. His breathing changed. He was fighting something, and slowly, visibly, he was losing. His knees buckled. He went down. The words came out of him not like a man who had decided to speak but like a man from whom something was being extracted. "I went to them," he said, his voice strange and strained. "I was young and I wanted more. They told me what it would cost. I agreed. I knew what I was agreeing to. I chose it. I traded myself for what they gave me. And then I needed a wife. They needed a wife. They needed someone through whom the payment would keep coming. I brought them. I chose them. Every man who came to her, I brought them. I watched them lose everything and I said nothing." Ngozi covered her mouth. The uncle closed his eyes. Chukwuemeka looked at Adaeze from his knees. And in that moment, Whatever had been driving him seemed to step back slightly, and the man she had fallen in love with appeared in his eyes one last time, diminished, hollowed, ashamed. "I did love you," he said. "That part was real. But it was not enough to make me stop. And I am sorry." Then the compound changed. The air shifted with a heaviness that pressed against the skin. The temperature dropped despite the evening heat. Something descended into that space that was not human and had not been invited. The force that struck Chukwuemeka was invisible to the eye but unmistakable in its result. He was thrown back by it. He hit the ground and did not move. He was gone before the sound of his fall had finished. The powers that he had served had collected the only payment left. But the battle was not over. That same force turned and crashed against the prophet like a wave. Prophet Samuel staggered backward. The praying grew louder around him. Felix and Adaeze and Ngozi and the uncle, voices raised, refusing to stop. The prophet regained his footing and stood firm. He spoke into the air before him with the full force of everything he carried, and the words he spoke were not panicked words but the words of a man who knew that what he stood on was stronger than what stood against him. What happened next could not be fully described by anyone who was there. Only that something broke. And then a silence fell over the compound, a clean, still silence, like the silence after a heavy rain. Miles away, in a general hospital ward, a man sat up in bed and looked around the room with clear eyes for the first time in months. Tebena did not know exactly where he was. He did not know what day it was. But he knew who he was. His mind had come back to him between one moment and the next, sudden and complete, like a light switched on in a dark room. He sat up and he called for a nurse, and when she came he asked for a phone because he needed to call his family. There were things to grieve. His wife. His child. Those griefs would not go away and they would not be small. But he was himself again. And he knew, without being able to explain why, that whatever had held him was gone. In his own home, the second man woke from a sleep that had felt like the bottom of a deep pit, and found that the heaviness that had been sitting on his chest for months had lifted. He lay still for a while, breathing. Just breathing. Then he got up and went to look out of his window at the street, and the morning felt, for the first time in a long time, like it was actually his. And Felix, who sat in the compound in that village through the rest of that night, felt the release the moment it happened. He described it later as something like chains falling off, but that was only the closest language he had for something that had no language. He sat very still for a while. Then he covered his face with both hands and allowed himself to cry in a way that he had not been able to cry through all the losses he had suffered, because grief needs freedom to move, and freedom had been returned to him. Adaeze sat in that same compound and did not cry. Not that night. She sat with her back against the wall of the house where her mother-in-law had lived and stared at the stars and thought about a car ride, a wedding, a pot wrapped in red cloth under a bed. She thought about how long she had lived in a beautiful house built over a terrible secret. She thought about Tebena and the second man and Felix and what they had each lost because of her doorstep. She did not know yet what her life would look like from this point. She did not know where she would go or how she would start again or what she would tell people when they asked about her marriage. She only knew that she was alive and free and that the morning was coming. And sometimes, that is where every real story begins. Not in the comfort that was false, not in the wealth that came with a price no one told her about. But here, at the edge of the truth, at the start of a morning that belonged only to her. There is a saying among the elders of Ugwek. They say, what a man buries in the dark, the earth will one day return to the light. Chukwuemeka buried his secret under a bed and called it love. He built a beautiful life on top of a clay pot and believed that beauty was enough to keep the darkness in place. But the earth does not keep secrets forever. It only holds them until the weight becomes too great. And Adaeze, a woman who only ever wanted to be loved and kept safe, had to walk through fire to find the freedom that should have been hers from the beginning. If there is one thing this story asks of you, it is this: pay attention. Not just to what you are given, but to what is being withheld. Not just to how a person makes you feel, but to what they are not saying. The wolf does not announce himself. He simply makes you feel warm until the door is closed. And that, friends, is the story of the man without a secret, or rather, the man with a secret too heavy for any house to hold. If this story moved you, if it kept you watching, if it made you think, then do something for us right now. Like this video. Subscribe to this channel if you have not already done so. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. And leave us a comment below telling us which part of the story hit you the hardest. Was it the wedding night? The prophet's revelation? Or that final moment in the compound? Your comments, your likes, your shares, they are what make it possible for us to keep bringing you stories like this. So do not keep this to yourself. Share it. Someone in your circle needs this story tonight. Visit our channel for more African folktales, more stories of truth, consequence, and redemption. We will be here. And we will always have another story waiting for you. Thank you for watching. And remember, the truth is never as heavy as the lie you carry to hide it.